So why the menopause? I suppose we did a survey last year, myself and the team, and we asked people what they wanted in relation to sexual health, and menopause came up very strongly as an area that people were interested in. So we wanted to talk about the menopause because often women's sexual health is not spoken about, can sometimes be made fun of, and sometimes even belittled or dismissed, including by ourselves as women. So we just wanted to open that space and give you some information, support and advice. And we really want your feedback as well today in the question and answer box. So again, just some quick statistics about the number of women in menopausal age in the central CSO statistics of 2016. 400,000 women in Ireland are within the 45 to 55 age range, the menopause age range. And there'll be women above and below that range as well. So that's 12% of the national population. In Cork and Kerry, a lot of whom you're on here today with us, 50,638 women are in that age range of 45 to 55, so it's 7.3%. And again, that's going to be higher given that women will be above and below that age with menopausal symptoms. And finally, the INMO in 2019 did a position paper on the menopause at work, and the really stark statistic there is that the number of women who make up the health service personnel is 80.2%. So this is a subject that's really, really important. And I'm delighted we're able to do something with it today with you. So the webinar will last about an hour and a half from 11 to 12:30. The first part of the webinar consists of our panelists. We've got 5 speakers and they have short presentations and they will last for about, each presentation is around 10 to 15 minutes. So that section will last about an hour. We first have a GP and a menopause specialist. Then we have a women's physio. We have an input on physical activity in the menopause, nutrition and the menopause, and then finally cognitive behavior therapy and mindfulness and the menopause. So ways that you can support and encourage yourself at this time. In the last half hour then of the menopause, those panelists will be live for questions. So we're going to do our best to answer a lot of questions. Just to say, the only way you can ask questions today is to put your questions in the questions and answer box at the bottom of your screen. We can't take verbal questions, unfortunately, because there's so many people on. You may get a dismiss notice with your question. That doesn't mean we've dismissed your question. It just means it's been fielded into the system behind the scenes. So please don't be insulted by that or put out by that. We may not get to answer your question, but we'll do our best. So without further ado, I will start with the speakers. So first of all, to say thank you for all of our panelists. We have Brenda, Orla, Shirley, Fiona and Coleen. My sincere thank you to all of you for your work on this. I know I have put you under pressure to get stuff in a short space of time. So I really want to thank you for your enthusiasm and your generosity and your spirit in relation to this work. So first up today, our first speaker is Dr. Brenda Moran, and we're very lucky to have Brenda in the region. So Brenda is a GP and a British Menopause Society accredited menopause specialist. She did her menopause training in King's College Hospital in London. She founded the Danu Clinic in 2020 to cater for women in perimenopause and menopause. She's a member of the British Menopause Society, the Irish College of General Practitioners, and a diplomate member of the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Healthcare. So Brenda, I'm delighted to have you today, and it's over to you now for your input for the next while.
Thanks, Adele, for the introduction. I'm delighted today to talk about the menopause. I have only 15 minutes, so it's going to be quick, and I mightn't get time to go through everything on the slides, but if anyone has any questions, just hold them and I'll go through them at the end of the webinar. So I'm just going to talk about basic terminology at the start. Menopause means the permanent cessation of periods for which there is no other medical cause. It comes from the Greek word men or menos, meaning month, and pauses, which means pause or stop. So periods must have stopped for a year or more over the age of 50, or 2 years or more under the age of 50, for someone to deem to be gone through the menopause. And it's a retrospective diagnosis so it can only be diagnosed with certainty after the event has happened. The average age at menopause in Ireland is estimated to be 51. However, that average age appears to be increasing, possibly due to environmental factors. The average age range is from 45 to 55, with an early menopause being from age 40 to 45, and premature ovarian insufficiency then is considered anyone having gone through menopause or have ovarian insufficiency symptoms under the age of 40. Conversely, late menopause occurs when women still have ovarian function after the age of 55. So there's a wide age range, and determinants include genetic and environmental factors. Environmental factors include things such as smoking, and genetic factors then may include, for example, genes such as your mother's age when she went through the menopause. However, there's not always a correlation, but there is an association. So why is it important? It's important because on average, a third of one's life will be spent in a postmenopausal stage. And this will be even longer as life expectancy continues to increase. This then has potential health implications which people need to be aware of. So 75 to 80% of women are estimated to experience at least one or more symptom of the menopause. Symptoms last for 7 years on average, but a third of people will experience ongoing symptoms longer than this. And then 25% of women then will experience a difficult menopause transition with multiple symptoms. Therefore, it's important to be aware of the menopause and potential associated symptoms. In the perimenopause then, this is the reproductive phase or stage which occurs prior to menopause, and it ends 12 months after a woman's last menstrual period. This can last several years and is very, very variable from woman to woman. It's defined by one of two things. So the first being a change in a menstrual cycle, which can be subtle, and the second being the advent of the first menopausal symptom or symptom consistent with estrogen deficiency. What happens in the perimenopause, again, varies from person to person, but in general, you get fluctuating hormones. Estrogen and progesterone levels tend to fluctuate and they decline over time, and then eventually the ovary no longer produces estrogen and progesterone, therefore no longer releases an egg, and menstruation stops. Fluctuating hormones and the decline in estrogen then can lead to a variety of symptoms affecting different parts of the body. And this is because there are estrogen receptors all over our body, in the brain, in the gastrointestinal tract, the cardiovascular system, mucous membranes such as the eyes and the mouth, joints, bones, vagina, bladder, and skin. I'm going to start off with mood symptoms because these are the commonest symptoms I encounter when people come to see me in the clinic, and they were frequently unrecognized in the past. And why people get mood symptoms is likely due to a neurotransmitter effect because estrogen stimulates neurotransmitter receptors in the brain, such as serotonin, dopamine, and glutamate. So therefore, when estrogen levels decline or stop, this can then impact neurotransmitter levels. So symptoms such as anxiety can be common around the perimenopause and the menopause, irritability, or people can have a short fuse or fly off the handle more frequently than what they used to in the past, low mood, tearfulness, mood swings, the feeling of being overwhelmed, loss of confidence, which can be multifactorial, or worsening PMS symptoms in the perimenopause. Then you've got your classic vasomotor symptoms, which are so commonly associated with menopause. These would include hot flushes and night sweats. This is due to a declining effect on estrogen, or the effect of declining estrogen on the thermoregulatory center in the brain. You can have one without the other, and it can be a source of embarrassment for people, especially in social situations or work situations, and can also lead to poor quality sleep. Then there are numerous physical symptoms which women may encounter as their estrogen levels decline or stop, which include palpitations, headaches, generalized aches and pains, joint stiffness, bloating, irritable bowel symptoms, tinnitus, dizziness, breast tenderness, dry eyes, mouth, skin, dry mouth or tongue, burning, tongue, restless legs, hair loss, itchy skin, formication, which is the feeling of insects crawling on skin, acne, or an increase in facial hair. And there are miscellaneous symptoms such as poor sleep, which can be multifactorial due to vasomotor symptoms, due to anxiety or rumination, or due to an actual effect in the brain itself from low estrogen or declining estrogen. People can experience cognitive symptoms such as brain fog or poor concentration or focus. This is due to a declining estrogen effect or a low estrogen effect in the prefrontal cortex or the hippocampus, fatigue, and low energy. Then there are genitourinary symptoms which women may experience, such as an overactive bladder, recurrent urinary tract infections, dry vagina, itchy vagina, painful sex, and low libido. Then there are effects of menstruation, which tend to occur in the perimenopause, which again is a change in a previous menstrual cycle, which can be very subtle at the start. That can typically occur in a woman's late 30s, early 40s. So those changes can be the cycle length becoming longer, or conversely, the cycle length can become shorter, or can in some cases have no discernible pattern. Periods can become heavier, which can sometimes lead to the need for gynecological investigations, or sometimes periods can become lighter, or women can experience new onset dysmenorrhea or painful periods for the first time. The long-term effects then of having declining levels of estrogen or no estrogen, including an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, increased risk of osteoporosis, and 1 in 2 women will have genital urinary symptoms, as described earlier, formerly known as genital urinary syndrome of the menopause. However, some people find it a time of positivity, creativity, and an opportunity for change. So there can be positives, such as no longer having periods or worries about contraception. It's considered a life transition. And in China, it's known as a second spring, where women are admired for their wisdom, and menopause is looked upon as a time of opportunity or positive of life event. So it's not a negative event for all. Treatment options then include lifestyle modification, psychological therapies, complementary therapies, non-hormonal oral therapies, and HRT. Lifestyle changes include dietary changes, and I'm not going to go into these in detail because they're going to be discussed later. But my take-home message is to avoid sugar swings, which can exacerbate menopausal symptoms. Stop smoking if you're a smoker, because smoking is associated with vasomotor symptoms. Increase exercise. Exercise is associated with an endorphin release and a serotonin effect. And serotonin is our feel-good hormone, so it makes us feel better and can modify some of the menopausal symptoms that some women experience and improve them. Reduce caffeine. If you're a coffee drinker in particular, caffeine is linked to insomnia, anxiety, and palpitations. So we should be drinking max 2 cups of tea or coffee per day. The last cup of tea or coffee should be before 2 p.m. because of the long half-life of caffeine. We need to reduce alcohol. If you drink more than 2 units a day or 11 units per week, this will be considered higher than the low risk level, which is now considered 11 units per week, which is the equivalent of a bottle of wine and 1 standard drink. Alcohol is a depressant, and it can also cause anxiety, and these symptoms can exacerbate any menopausal symptoms that might be present. Paraphernalia can help, such as portable fans that you could bring into your bag and bring to work. Stress reduction is important, so looking at your working life, maybe not taking on as many projects as you did in the past. Sleep hygiene can help, so utilizing things like blackout blinds in your room, using layering of blankets, so not having a big duvet, as this may antagonize night sweats at night, and also just not having any digital devices in your room, and investing in an old-fashioned alarm clock so that you're not putting your alarm on your phone, and winding down for an hour before you go to bed. So all those things can potentially help if sleep is an issue. Psychological therapies such as mindfulness and CBT. I'm not going to go into those because they're going to be discussed later on. Complementary therapies can help someone, such as acupuncture. There's a small evidence base for acupuncture. It'll help some women and not others. Phytoestrogens can help some women. Phytoestrogens are natural substances occurring in plants which have estrogen-like effects, and they can be obtained in some food sources such as soya, but also can be obtained in some of the common menopausal supplements in the market. There's also small evidence base for black cohosh, St. John's wort, and maca. So I would advise not to take them if you are taking any prescribed medications. Menopause supplements usually have a combination of B vitamins, vitamin D, and soy isoflavones, which is a phytoestrogen. So they can help someone, particularly if they've got mild to moderate symptoms. Some women might start taking these and they can have a positive effect. But if people have severe symptoms, they're unlikely to make much impact on severe symptoms. Then there's non-hormonal oral therapies, which shouldn't be used first line for mood symptoms, which they are commonly used or prescribed for mood symptoms, but they shouldn't be. Mood symptoms have occurred for the first time around the time of the perimenopause and menopause. However, they can be useful when HRT is contraindicated or not desired. Examples include SSRIs, SNRIs, clonidine, melatonin, amitriptyline, beta blockers, oxybutynin. Melatonin is a hormone, but I'm putting it in that bracket because it's not HRT, estrogen, or progesterone. If anyone has any questions about these, get back to me and I'll answer them at the end. I just don't have time to go through each individual one at the moment. But I'm going to then lead on to HRT, which we're going to discuss for the rest of the presentation, which in some countries is called menopausal hormone replacement therapy. It remains the most effective treatment for menopausal symptoms. It has a lingering negative connotation in the media and also within the medical profession. Following the WHI trial in the early 2000s and the Million Women study. However, there are newer preparations in the market since then which have a better safety profile, and the studies such as the WHI trial, the women that were taking HRT in these studies were of older age, and the average woman going through the menopause who would be taking HRT. So it wasn't indicative of the usual person that would be taking HRT. There's a window of opportunity now where it's thought that if HRT is prescribed within 10 years of the menopause, under age of 60, in general, the benefits outweigh the risks for the majority. The newer body-identical transdermal regimens in the market are identical in molecular structure to women's own body ovarian hormones, such as estradiol and progesterone. And therefore, it's not associated with an increased risk of clotting because it enters the bloodstream via the skin. Therefore, it's not ingested and doesn't activate the clotting factors in the liver. And low to moderate doses isn't associated with an increased risk of stroke. And it's safest from a cardiac, VTE, and breast perspective. There are numerous types of HRT. There's sequential combined HRT, which is estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen is taken every day and progesterone for half of the month. Continuous combined HRT, which is usually started in postmenopausal women, which is daily estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen only HRT for women that don't have a womb. Vaginal estrogen therapy, testosterone therapy, Tibolone, which is a synthetic steroid with weak estrogen, progesterone, and androgenic activity, and SERMs, which are selective estrogen receptor modulators, which mimic or block the effect of estrogen on different parts of the body. The benefits are that HRT improves symptoms. That's the main indication for treatment. It improves symptoms, and the aim of treatment is for symptoms to go away or to have no symptoms. It also has a heart, bone, or brain benefit. It reduces, resolves, or improves genitourinary symptom of the menopause. It's associated with a reduced risk of colorectal cancer, and a continuous combined HRT is associated with a reduced risk of endometrial cancer. Why is this important? It's important because cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in postmenopausal women. The International Osteoporosis Foundation reports that worldwide 1 in 3 women over the age of 50 will develop an osteoporotic fracture, and rates of colorectal cancer and endometrial cancer are increasing worldwide. The risks: there's an association with breast cancer in that there's a small increased risk of breast cancer with increasing duration of use, which reduces in stopping. This is thought to be in the range of 4 to 10 extra cases per 1,000 users, which manifests after 5 years, and that's with combined HRT. There's no risk or minimal excess risk with estrogen-only HRT. There's no dosage effect with estrogen. Therefore, taking additional estrogen in the form of HRT when a woman has ongoing menstrual cycles is not thought to add to breast cancer risk. And for women that do develop breast cancer, when taking HRT, there's no increased risk of mortality. Epidemiological studies suggest an extra 1 case of ovarian cancer in 1,000 users of HRT, but that wasn't evident in the WHI randomized control trial. There's a small increased risk of endometrial cancer with sequential combined HRT. There's a risk of irregular vaginal bleeding leading to invasive gynecological investigations, and a small increased risk of VTE with oral products. Contraindications to use would be a recent heart attack or poorly controlled angina, a recent VTE event, suspected or active breast cancer, endometrial cancer, severe or active liver disease, irregular non-investigated vaginal bleeding, and it should be discussed on a case-by-case basis and an individual approach adopted. Side effects would include spotting, irregular or heavy vaginal bleeding in some women, and this tends to settle with time or a change of regimen. However, if this continues on after 6 months, this will need investigating with a hysteroscopy, for example. Individual hormonal side effects then can be seen with estrogen, such as breast tenderness, headaches, dyspepsia, leg cramps, anxiety, and progesterone side effects then may include bloating, GI side effects, or mood symptoms. And again, these tend to settle with time or with the changes and adjustments to regimens. Body identical HRT then is your transdermal estrogen consisting of patches, gels, or spray, which you take via the skin, and micronized progesterone, trading mutogestin, consisting of oral capsules or vaginal capsules. This is now considered the gold standard way of taking HRT. However, there are other forms of taking HRT, such as transdermal estrogen with a marina coil, which gives you the progesterone component which can be your progesterone component for HRT. You can have transdermal estrogen with other forms of progesterone, such as dydrogesterone, or synthetic progesterone, such as progesterone or testosterone, or combined oral estrogen and progesterone, such as Femiston, or combined patches, such as Erbil Conti, which is body-identical estrogen with synthetic levonorgestrel. In the perimenopause, then, sequential HRT is advised, which will bring back a monthly withdrawal bleed similar to a period. This is because if a woman gets a continuous form of HRT in the perimenopause, their own ovarian activity can override the estrogen and progesterone in those continuous products, leading to regular bleeding, which might need investigation. So that's why sequential HRT is advised during that period. Or women can take transdermal estrogen or estrogen with a marina coil, which has the added benefit of lightening or stopping periods. And also has the added benefit of being a contraceptive, because HRT is not a contraceptive. So there still is the chance of pregnancy or conception in the perimenopause, albeit low. Other forms of contraception that women can take in the perimenopause, if taking HRT concomitantly, include the progesterone-only pill, the Implanon, the combined oral contraceptive pill in place of HRT if there's no contraindications, the copper coil, or ovarian contraception. Baseline investigations prior to starting HRT would be a blood pressure and BMI, and this should be then measured at every review appointment. Review appointments then should be at 3 months post-initiation, and then 6 to 12 monthly thereafter when stable and no side effects reported. Bloods are not necessary over the age of 45 because hormones fluctuate daily, so it won't add to the picture. However, the British Menopause Society do advise gonadotropins to be measured under the age of 45, but again, they don't need to be raised to start HRT. History is the most important consideration. There's no time limit on duration of treatment. Ongoing benefits and risks should be discussed annually. Just in terms of genital urinary symptoms of menopause, vaginal estrogen is more effective than the systemic HRT for these symptoms, and negligible amounts are absorbed into the bloodstream, and it's not associated with an increased risk of breast cancer or VTE, and can be started in postmenopausal women over the age of 60. Again, I don't have much time to go through these, but if anyone has any questions, you can ask me at the end. Testosterone therapy can sometimes help women if they have ongoing symptoms despite optimum HRT, estrogen, progesterone. And I don't have too much time to go into this. If someone has any questions about that, then ask me later. Bone health is obviously very important, and I know that's going to be discussed at a later presentation. Again, just people looking after the bone health as they enter the menopause is crucial with diet, weight bearing exercise. So the take-home message is that everyone will have a menopause unique to them. Knowledge is empowerment. There are treatments available if required or desired. There's an evidence base for lifestyle modification and psychological therapies. Some drive improvement in symptoms with complementary therapies, but there's a limited evidence base. HRT is safe. The benefits outweigh the risk for the majority of people when started within 10 years of the menopause or under the age of 60, especially with the newer body-identical regimen.
Thanks very much. That was great, Brenda. I just want to encourage you as well, between speakers, to maybe get up and stretch and give yourselves time to stretch, because you're going to be sitting for a while. So just remember to do that between the speakers. So that was great, Brenda. Thanks very much. So next up, we have Orla McCarthy. And delighted to have you, Orla. Orla is a senior physiotherapist in women's health and continence based at Cork University Maternity Hospital. As part of her work, she treats a variety of obstetric and gynecological issues such as pregnancy-related pelvic girdle pain, continence issues, prolapse, and chronic pelvic pain. Orla, we're delighted to have you with us today, and away you go. Thank you.
Today I'll be talking to you about the menopause through the lens of a women's health physiotherapist. And just to explain what the role of a women's health physiotherapist is, some common issues that we deal with, especially women who are going through the menopause. I'll also explain some of the hormonal and musculoskeletal changes that are occurring during the menopause. And today is all about breaking the taboo, giving you some support, empowering you, and educating women as they navigate through this phase of their life. So as a women's health physiotherapist, we're fully qualified physiotherapists, and we have undertaken some type of postgraduate specialist training in the area of obstetrics and gynecology. As part of my work, I'll assess and treat women who have symptoms of bladder or bowel dysfunction. They may have chronic pelvic pain, pelvic organ prolapse, and dyspareunia, which is a Latin term for pain during sex. We also treat women who are pregnant who are experiencing pelvic girdle pain in pregnancy. So it's a really interesting role. I see women in all phases of their life. And as part of our work, we are trained to conduct vaginal examinations, and we do a lot of manual therapy internally, working on the pelvic floor, not just strengthening it, but sometimes releasing muscles that have become a little bit too tight. We also work externally, working on the outside of the body. We go through a lot of advice and education when we're dealing with patients as well. So if we focus on the menopause and look at the sequence of hormonal and musculoskeletal changes that are occurring in the years coming up to the menopause and afterwards, a big thing is the reduction in your levels of estrogen hormone. Okay, this can have a big effect on your pelvic floor. The pelvic floor itself will have a lot of estrogen receptors. It's very sensitive to that hormone. So does your urethra. So having less estrogen can result in weaker pelvic floor muscles. You can get a lot of vaginal dryness, vaginal atrophy. You can have changes to your libido. Some women can have weak pelvic floor muscles, but they can also end up with hypertonic pelvic floor muscles as a result of these changes. As we age, it is normal to get a reduction in our muscle tone. It's a natural part of aging, and it occurs throughout the body. And the pelvic floor muscles are no different. You also may find you're not sleeping as well due to the night sweats. And all of these changes combined can then lead some women to experience painful sex. Some women may experience pelvic organ prolapse or some urinary or fecal incontinence or leaking. So one of the first things I would recommend to women is to think about using a lubricant. We would advise people to try and get organic products if they can, just because the ingredients are sometimes nicer for that part of your body. Lubricants can come in water or oil-based. Remember to use water-based lubricants if you're relying on condoms. And again, remember to use condoms if you have a new partner, which is something that a lot of people in this age category sometimes forget. So practicing safe sex, because STDs can be on the rise in this age category. Looking at long-lasting vaginal moisturizers as well is really important. So you can get them in your chemist. You don't need any prescription. Or if you do choose to get the lubricant, the oil-based is quite nice to use as a vaginal moisturizer as well. And what's nice about them is that there's no hormones, so they're a nice alternative if you cannot use estrogen-based creams or pessaries. And the lubricants and the long-lasting vaginal moisturizers, you can usually get them in most chemists or even some health shops. It's important to discuss using some type of topical estrogen cream or even a vaginal pessary with your GP to see if this would be a suitable option for you, because this might help replace that estrogen that you've lost, and it may make a big difference to the pelvic floor muscles itself, help with that vaginal dryness that you're experiencing. So painful sex, it's something that no one wants to speak about. It's like the last taboo. I treat it every day as a women's health physiotherapist. Some women are young and some women are older. They're going through the menopause. So it can be for a variety of reasons. One of the biggest things I would say to you is if you're experiencing this is to keep the channels of communication open with your partner. It's not just your problem. Talk about it, explore, think about using your lubricant, okay, which I've already mentioned during sex, and also something as simple as positioning. So maybe you'll position yourself into a spooning position where there's less penetration, so it's not as sore as some of the other positions. Foreplay, so focusing on arousal, is a key part of quality sex, especially as women. And sometimes when you're experiencing pain with sex, people tend to skip that part, and it's one of the most important parts in order for sex to be comfortable for you. I cannot emphasize how important it is to seek a referral to someone like me, to a women's health physiotherapist. We're specialized and we can assess and treat you for this. Sometimes you need a little bit work done on your pelvic floor. It may become a little bit hypertonic or a little bit tight. There's lots that we can do to help you. This slide is just showing, I suppose, that there's so many varying degrees or different shapes and sizes when it comes to the vagina. So, you know, get to know your body. I have a nice link at the end of this presentation, and it's about getting to know your vulva, and that there is no normal. Okay, we all come in different shapes and sizes. Understand your body, understand your anatomy a little bit more, know where your clitoris is. Kind of working on stimulation of this is a really important part of foreplay, okay, so that you do have good quality sex. I put up a series of pictures just to show you the pelvic floor muscles, okay, so these muscles go from our pubic bone in front and they attach to your tailbone at the back. They're like a sling of muscles, almost like a basin shape. And you can see in one of those photos, you've got your bladder sitting on top of it, your womb, and then your bowel. Its job is to give you lots of support for your back and your hips. It helps control your bladder and bowel. And it also is really important during sex so that you ideally will have strong orgasms. But also the pelvic floor muscles need to be able to relax enough to allow you to be able to have sex. So I'm going to focus, I'm going to begin first of all looking at stress urinary incontinence. So this is basically leaking urine when there's any increase in intra-abdominal pressure. So that can be through coughing, sneezing, laughing, or any exertion. So could it be, for some women, it's just with exercise that they notice a few leaks. One of the best things you can do for stress incontinence is to do your pelvic floor exercises. There's really good research. So 72% of women with this problem will be cured or significantly improved by doing their pelvic floor exercises, ideally under the supervision of a physiotherapist like me, because sometimes people are doing the exercises, but they're not doing them correctly. Managing your weight as well. So if you are overweight, looking at that, because a body weight loss of about 8% if you are overweight can affect your stress urinary incontinence symptoms by up to 50%. So something as simple as that can make all the difference. So just going through the pelvic floor strengthening exercises quickly, the most important thing is that you choose a comfortable position, lie down on your side or your back, or be in a supported sitting. Keep the muscles of your thighs and your bum and your stomach nice and relaxed, and don't hold your breath, okay? When we're doing our slower exercises, and you can do these with me as I'm going through them, I want you to think about the back passage. I want you to close the muscles around the back passage as if you're trying to stop wind. You're going to do the same thing around the front as if you're trying to stop urine. Keep those two areas squeezed for ideally a count of 10 seconds, making sure you're breathing normally, you're not holding your breath. When you get to your 10 seconds, or whatever your limit is, I want you to relax the muscles and let them go. This part is equally as important as the squeezing closed. The idea is that you do about 10 reps of these 3 times a day. The faster pelvic floor exercises, with these, what you're doing is you're squeezing the back and front passage, nice, strong, quick squeeze for 1 second only. Then you let them go and you feel the muscles relax. Give it a few seconds, then you repeat that again, about 10 reps, 3 times a day. And that is all you need to do. That's what the guidelines recommend. There's a really nice trick that you can use called the knack. There's lots of evidence for this. So if you know that you leak a few drops of urine when you're sneezing or coughing, why not try and squeeze your pelvic floor muscle as you're about to sneeze or cough? And you may find that it stops the leaking. This is working to help improve the timing of the pelvic floor muscles, which is important. A lot of women were told when they had their babies years ago to do their pelvic floor exercises while sitting on the toilet. Really, really bad thing to do. It actually confuses the bladder and you end up not emptying fully. So don't do those exercises sitting on the toilet, okay? It's not a good time to do them. Another condition that women going through the menopause may experience is overactive bladder kind of symptoms. So urgency, needing to kind of go to the toilet quite a lot, frequency, going to the loo just in case because you're almost afraid of leaking, and then leaking before making it to the toilet. So I have a few tips here up on the slide, and it's just about helping these symptoms and just maintaining a healthy bladder. You can see the chart to the right. There are certain drinks and foods that can irritate the bladder and other ones that are a little bit better. So you can read through them there as I'm speaking. But one of the most important things is to drink about 1.5 liters of fluid a day. Okay, and a lot of women and men aren't drinking enough, okay? Reduce your caffeine because this irritates the bladder. Maybe switch to decaf tea, coffee, avoiding green tea because it is high in caffeine. Okay, so if this is an issue for you, this overactive bladder, I would suggest avoiding it. Coca-Cola because it has caffeine in it. Sparkling water, fizzy drinks, alcohol, citrus fruits like your lemons and your limes and your oranges and your juices, they can all irritate the bladder as well and make you need to go a little bit more. Try to stop going to the loo just in case and retrain your bladder to go ideally every 3 to 4 hours. This is what we should be doing during the day. But some women have gotten into the habit of going every hour. Remember, this takes time. There's a few things you can use to help you. So crossing your legs when you get that urge, or sitting on an armrest, something that gives pressure up through the perineum. Squeezing your pelvic floor muscles to help stop the urge can work quite well. Distraction, okay, so maybe you're working or you're busy with your kids or go on your phone. Standing and rocking on your tiptoes can actually stimulate a nerve underneath the sole of the foot, the S2 nerve, and this nerve actually controls your bladder. So by doing that, by standing and rocking on your tiptoes, you can actually get that urge to just relax a little bit and buy you a little bit more time. And lastly, don't hover on the loo. Okay, really bad. You end up not emptying the bladder fully, and you may end up getting bladder infections, or you may find you need to go back to the toilet again soon after. Prolapse. Okay, so some women will get a prolapse of their bladder or their bowel or their womb. So you can see here in the photo, it shows what normal anatomy is. So this is as if I've sliced someone's body down through the side, and you can see in the front, that's the bladder in the front, then we have the womb in the middle, and then you have the bowel. So on the top right-hand corner, that's a rectocele. This is when the rectum is dipping in towards the vagina. Okay, uterine prolapse is when the uterus has dipped down through the vagina a little bit, and there are different grades of severity, obviously. The cystocele is when the bladder, okay, dips in against the front wall of the vagina. Okay, so there's a weakness in that front wall. So patients will often describe kind of a heaviness, or they may feel a pressure or dragging ache vaginally. And sometimes it can be difficult to empty your bowels if you have a prolapse of the bowel or a rectocele. Generally, it's worse with prolonged standing or lifting, or if you've had a particularly busy day, you might find symptoms of your prolapse are worse. So a few tips just to help you all prevent you from getting a pelvic organ prolapse. So avoid heavy lifting. Okay, heavy lifting isn't good for any of us. And ask for help or modify the task. Avoid constipation. Constipation, that strain can really put a lot of pressure on the pelvic floor muscles and could potentially lead to a prolapse. So avoid it and avoid any straining. Remember to breathe out as you push down towards your back passage to empty your bowels. And I put up a photo there. So this is the ideal position when we're emptying our bowels. Our knees should be higher up than our hips. And by leaning forwards and resting your forearms on the inner part of your knees, you're actually changing the anorectal angle at the back, and straight away it's much easier to empty the bowels. So everyone should be emptying their bowels like this. Again, are you drinking enough? We should be drinking about 1.5 liters of fluid a day. And are you taking in enough fiber? So things like oats, whole grain breads, vegetables, any fruit with skin on, so like kiwis, pears, all of this will help your bowels and keep them nice and regular. Manage your weight and avoid, I suppose, unnecessary prolonged standing. So if you can sit down as opposed to standing. Pelvic floor strengthening exercises will certainly help prevent a prolapse, or if you do have a prolapse already, and we've gone through them. I put this slide up because I think it's important for people to realize leaking is very common. So 1 in 3 women will leak at some point in their lives. As we get older and as we go through the menopause, we're probably more likely to experience it because of the hormonal changes that I've just discussed at the start. But the question is, why do we accept these kind of oops moments? It's almost been normalized in our society to accept it, that this is something you have to put up as a woman, especially if you've had a baby or especially if you're older. And the marketing industry is very clever. You know, they've almost made it sexy. You can now get kind of underwear that can work as continence pads, and they have names like Silhouette and different things on them. But really, it isn't something that should be accepted. There's so much that you can do about it. There's so much that we can do as women's health physiotherapists to help you. So I would urge you, if you're experiencing any issues such as leaking or maybe painful sex, please speak to your GP about getting referred to a women's health physiotherapist for an individualized assessment and a treatment plan. We're here to help you. Please don't suffer in silence. There's so much that we can do for you. And again, just, make sure you make contact with your GP and ask to be referred. You can follow some of the advice and the exercises that I've gone through, and some of you may find that this helps you if you experience it. But if it's not, if things aren't getting better, make sure you do get referred. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Orla. There's so much information there to take in, and it's so important to know that your service exists. So thank you very much for that. Again, to remind you to stretch during the periods in between speakers so that you don't get stiff, and we all get to stretch ourselves and take some time for that. So next up, we have Shirley O'Shea, and Shirley is one of our close colleagues in health promotion. We're delighted to have her. She's a senior health promotion officer for physical activity. Shirley has over 20 years experience in the health services, and her qualifications span exercise and fitness, exercise referral, and pre and postnatal fitness. So Shirley, looking forward to hearing what you have to say, and it's over to you now. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Adele. Delighted today to be able to talk to you about physical activity and the menopause. We're all very aware of the many health benefits we can get from regular physical activity. But today we're going to talk about what specific type of exercise is helpful during the menopause and beyond. This Healthy Island survey shows us that less than half of all adults take the recommended 30 minutes a day of moderate to vigorous activity. And we can see from the graph that as we reach menopause, the 40 plus age group, that activity levels start to rapidly decline into menopause and beyond into older age. So if we look at how do women fare in terms of activity levels, we can see that this survey carried out by Sport Island, that only 38% of women are meeting the national physical activity guidelines of 30 minutes a day versus about 54% of men. Women do better in terms of less sitting time than men. But in terms of the divide between mothers and fathers, there's only 40% of mothers meet the guidelines versus 60% of fathers. And when we look at some of the barriers for women, we see that 46% of mothers say that they cite being too busy looking after family as a reason why they're insufficiently active versus only 21% of fathers. So this is perhaps telling us that women don't protect their time for exercise as well as men do, and is something to think about as we enter into menopause, about maybe carving out that time for yourself and prioritising it. So we know that we should be physically active throughout the life course, but we know that throughout the different stages of life that can often change. And as we enter menopause age, those years that were perhaps traditionally we're not involved as in organised sport as we might be. So what type of activity is going to be good for us as we enter into menopause? So most of us would be familiar with aerobic type activity, the type of activity that we do every day and is easy to build into everyday life, like walking, also things like running and swimming and cycling, all good for our heart and lungs and really good for fitness done at a moderate to vigorous activity level. When we enter into the menopause years, that building strength exercises into our everyday routine is really important as we try and maintain muscle mass. We can do this through, doing exercises in the gym or using light weights. But if you're a beginner to strength type exercises, what I'd recommend is something like resistance type exercises. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. What's also really important during menopause is that we try and do some weight bearing exercise that's going to be good for bones. It's going to be the type of exercise that produces a force through the skeleton. So short bursts of high intensity exercise like skipping or jumping jacks, running up and down stairs, that kind of thing is going to be really good for bone loading, as our bone mass is kind of on the decrease, if you like. And often an area that we neglect is flexibility. And we often think of flexibility as something that perhaps we have or we don't have. But flexibility and mobility is really important as we age. It's going to help us feel better as we move and is also going to reduce injury and just make us that bit easier to do the activities of daily living. Things like Pilates and yoga, stretching and mobility type exercises are all really good for everyday flexibility and mobility. One of the things that we often hear is about gaining weight in menopause, and that is it just inevitable as we age? The studies show us that perhaps it's more to do with age rather than hormonal status. So it doesn't mean that we have to do more exercise, but perhaps we need to just exercise in a different way. So something to think about is, how do we build those into our everyday routine anyway? So going back to the strength type exercises, if you're someone that doesn't use gyms or doesn't normally do this type of activity, I'd recommend starting with some resistance type activity using your own body weight. These use all the major muscles in the body and are using basically your own body weight to increase strength in the muscles. So that saying, you know, use it or lose it is very true here. You could also use resistance type bands or light weights if you're used to using those. And I can share some information about where you can follow an exercise program using these exercises. Moving on then to bone density and bone mass. Osteoporosis is something we hear a lot about during menopause, and we know that our peak bone mass is reached in late adolescence at about 18 years. And then you can see from this graph that as we enter premenopause and postmenopause, there's a rapid decline. So that's why it's really important that we focus on those weight-bearing activities to help during this important time. So what kind of activities are good and which are the best ones to do? So you can see here the effects on bone density versus the different types of activities. So things like swimming and cycling are really good aerobic fitness type activities that are really enjoyable. However, they don't provide the bone loading process that perhaps brisk walking, running and jogging, jumping and strength training do. So you can see that they're better, that kind of high intensity activity is better for you. So continue with your swimming and cycling if that's what you do. But all you need to do is incorporate 1 to 2 minutes every day or a couple of times a week into. So if you're doing a brisk walk, you could perhaps do a few jumping jacks at the end. If you normally jog, then that is going to give you that bone loading exercise, or else just build in a few strengthening exercises at the end of a walk. To finish with, my 3 take-home messages are: start to include weight-bearing exercise for your bones if you're not doing that already. Incorporate muscle strengthening to reduce the muscle loss that we get from age 30 onwards. And also prioritise time for yourself to exercise and protect the time every day for you, because we know it's going to be beneficial for you managing the menopause in lots of different ways. If you need a bit of inspiration for exercise, this is a great campaign called This Girl Can. It's trying to inspire more girls and women to exercise more, no matter what their shape or size or ability level. And you can Google it and watch their videos on YouTube. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Shirley. That was brilliant. We have 2 more speakers left, so there's about 15 to 20 minutes or so left, just so you know how much time before the questions and answers. So again, keep your stretches up there and move around, and if you need to make coffee and stuff, you do that as well. So our next speaker today, again close to home, Fiona is a close colleague of ours, and she works as a senior community dietitian with the Health Promotion and Improvement Department. Fiona has 19 years experience working with Cork communities to promote healthy eating and offering a free dietetic service in primary care to clients on the north side of the city. Fiona believes in eating well to live well, and we're really happy, Fiona Rush, to have you here with us today. So Fiona, over to you for the next few minutes. Thanks a million.
So welcome everybody. This is the presentation on Eat Well to Be Well, top tips for your nutrition during menopause. And I'm Fiona Rush, dietitian, and I hope you enjoy it. So why would we need good nutrition in the first place for the menopause? What is the role? If we think about it, we know that estrogen, when it decreases during menopause, causes a number of changes in our body. And these can include an increase in abdominal fat, particularly caused by increased insulin resistance. So we lay down our fat more around the middle. We know it affects bone density. We know it increases joint pain, increases cholesterol and blood pressure. So certainly that increased risk of heart disease is there. We know it also gives us more sluggish digestion, so slows things down and more prone to constipation. The vasomotor symptoms of menopause, they talk about the hot flushes and night sweats. There's mood swings, there's increased risk of urinary tract infections, amongst others. But estrogen is having this effect on all of these systems. Also, because of the age that we're at this stage in life, the aging effects can also have an impact on our nutrition. So we know that we're losing lean muscle mass as we get older, and lean muscle mass burns up more calories than fat mass. So if we're losing that, we tend to be burning less calories and therefore require less calories every day. So we may not be compensating for that. We know also that aging decreases our metabolic rate, which again slows things down and can lead to the weight gain. And also, as things are slowing down, we can be more prone to constipation. So our fiber is going to be important in that sense. So I'm going to focus the presentation today on managing the weight, supporting your bone health and supporting your heart health, because there is most evidence for those points. And I'll discuss a little bit about other bits and pieces that may help people. So number one, in terms of the weight, unfortunately, there is no superfood for menopause. If I knew one, I'd be rich, but there is none. There's no food we can eat lots of that will decrease your symptoms. It's very much about this idea of getting a balanced diet. What do we mean by that? Essentially, it is just getting your food groups from the food pyramid. We'll take a look at it. So getting all of your food groups to ensure that we're getting a good variety of nutrients over the day. And if just a quick Google search of looking at diet and menopause, you can see down at the bottom there all of the images that comes up. Lots of wild and wonderful ideas about how to manage your diet during menopause. But really what it boils down to is having that balanced diet, and not the one in the picture up on the top right of the screen there. So remember, exercise and sleep also has an effect on our weight. So we need to be mindful of these points as well as our diet. But overall, I would say to be kind to ourselves. Weight gain around your middle is normal at this stage in life. Looking at a healthy, balanced diet, really we talk about the food pyramid. And the food pyramid information you can see there at the bottom of the screen on the right. healthyireland.ie has all the resources around the food pyramid and various meal plans at different life stages. So really looking at it to explain the food pyramid in your own time. If you're looking at this presentation again, you can click on the little video link in the bottom left that talks you through the food pyramid. But essentially what we're looking at here is eating more of the foods from the bottom and less as we go up. So one way to kind of bring that all together is just looking at the portions on your plate. And we talk about this plan your plate idea, which is half of the plate filled with vegetables, the other half split between your protein source. It might be your meat, fish and chicken, vegetarian sources of beans, and the other quarter would be your carbohydrate source, so your potatoes, pasta, rice. That's a nice way just to think about it. If you're looking at your lunch or dinner plate, if it's roughly representing those proportions of food, we're pretty much on track for your healthy eating. We're doing well. So what else is important in the menopause? Definitely feed our bones. We know 1 in 4 Irish women by 60 have a fracture due to osteoporosis. We need to replace the lost calcium from our bones. We start losing them from about 30 onwards. We start losing calcium from your bones. So to replace it, we need at least 3 servings of dairy from the food pyramid per day. And these would be about an ounce cheese, or they say 2 thumbs worth of cheese, a glass of milk, or a small pot of yogurt. The equivalent in terms, if you don't eat these foods and you're taking a supplement, you'd be looking for at least 800 milligrams a day of calcium. And just remember, when we're having our calcium foods, it's to remember to go for the low-fat varieties for heart health. They still have the same calcium in them, and that's the most important thing. Vitamin D we make from the sun, which we don't get too much of in Ireland. We can also get it in our diet in things like oily fish, eggs, red meat, fortified milks, but we don't get enough from the diet. So we do need to take the supplement of vitamin D. Usually the recommendation is about 10 micrograms per day, especially over the winter months when we're not getting sun. But more recent research is showing now that the decreased risk of COVID can come with higher doses of vitamin D. So about 20 to 25 micrograms a day, or you might see it written as 800 to 1,000 international units a day. The other message, love your heart. So we know that after menopause, our risk of heart disease increases. And as we saw earlier, that's mainly due to the effects of lower estrogen, increasing cholesterol and increasing blood pressure. We know that a Mediterranean style diet can help, and this is essentially just a heart healthy diet. So fill up on fiber. This is important to get your whole grains in, so your high fiber types of breads, of cereals, and also the fiber from the pulse vegetables like the beans, lentils, peas. Your fruit and vegetables, really important for the soluble fiber particularly, which helps to lower cholesterol and also has antioxidants which can help prevent damage to the body. We know that cutting down on fat is gives a big impact for heart health, and particularly saturated fat, the one in animal fats. So your fatty meats, butter, full fat dairy will have more of the saturated fat, and switching more so to the vegetable sources of fats and oils. Particularly our omega-3 fats. These are from our oily fish mainly. Salmon, trout, herring, mackerel. These ones can help protect our heart, so we aim to try and eat them maybe twice a week. We need to watch the carbohydrate portions, as we said earlier, so just watching the amounts we're eating, particularly of the refined sugars. Again, they're adding to the weight gain. Regular eating pattern is important. This is kind of part of the Mediterranean style diet because they do tend to have quite fixed meal patterns and don't tend to skip meals maybe as much as we can do here. Limiting alcohol is another point, and for women they would recommend no more than 11 standard drinks per week, so the equivalent of maybe 11 small glasses of wine, about 100 mils at a time, or 5 pints over the week spread out. A couple of other things that might help with some of the menopausal symptoms. There's some evidence around the effectiveness of phytoestrogens or plant estrogens. Basically, they're found in things like linseeds or soya products like tofu or soya milk, soya yogurts. They can have a mild estrogen-like effect, but they must be eaten regularly. They say at least 3 times a day seems to be more helpful than having one big portion in the day. We don't really know exactly the amounts though that has this effect, and it can take 2 to 3 months for the effect to be seen. So it may help hot flushes. We know that gut bacteria are somewhat involved in the success. So again, back to having your healthy, balanced diet will ensure good bacteria to potentially make the plant estrogens more successful. However, they're not recommended in breast cancer just for their estrogen-like effect. Other things that may or may not help, certainly we know for hot flushes that decrease in hot spicy foods, caffeine and alcohol can help. We need to watch the herbal remedies. Unregulated ones are not necessarily safe, even though they may be natural, and can have side effects, serious side effects, and can interact with other medication that people may be on. So have a look out for that logo there. The THR is Traditional Herbal Registration, and that gives a sense of some herbal remedies that would be somewhat regulated. But remember, they're never as strictly regulated as medicines are. So St. John's wort and black cohosh are 2 of the traditional remedies that seem to have a little more evidence, perhaps around decreasing hot flushes. But again, we need to watch that these may interact with other drug interactions, with other medications. So very much important just to discuss any supplement you're thinking of taking with your healthcare professional. There is no evidence really for the role of ginseng, Chinese herbs. Evening primrose oil doesn't seem to affect the hot flushes, but for some people they would report maybe change in mood. So there may be some rule there. But I suppose for all the things that there isn't evidence of, thankfully there's plenty of evidence for the good things that do help. So it's just to remember to do them. So focusing on our healthy eating, remembering the HRT definitely will manage these symptoms for you. Exercise, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness. There is evidence for all of these things that will help. So do these first before investigating the other options for yourselves. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned some things. And remember, just watch your weight, love your heart, and mind your bones. Thank you. Bye now.
Thanks a million, Fiona. That was great. I love the love your heart piece. Just to remind you, in the questions and answer function, you can put questions in there. If you can think of any from the last few speakers, if you want to include those, do. Also, we'd be delighted with feedback there. We will be doing a survey at the end, but if you're rushing off and you want to give us feedback now around the methodology we used or anything else you want to give us feedback on, please do that in the Q&A, because we'll harvest that afterwards. So just keep those coming in. So last but by no means least, we have Dr. Coleen Cormack. And Coleen is a senior clinical psychologist with the HSE with over 20 years experience working with both children and adults. Coleen currently works in an adult mental health setting with people with moderate to severe mental health difficulties. She uses mindfulness and compassion-based approaches in both her work and her personal life, and so she can see the benefits from both sides. So, Coleen, we're delighted to have you today to talk to us, and it's over to you now for the next 10 minutes or so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adele. It's good to be here today, and thank you for inviting me. Menopause is a natural transition that all women go through in their lives, and yet despite being natural and normal, it can be a challenging time due to various symptoms we experience. These changes and associated symptoms can impact quality of life and daily functioning. Today, I'd like to help you understand what happens from a psychological point of view and introduce you to some tips that will help you manage your mental well-being and help alleviate some of the symptoms. These are some of the common symptoms that affect women psychologically in menopause. Vasomotor symptoms of hot flushes and night sweats occur when estrogen levels are changing and adjusting to lower levels during the menopause transition. Hot flushes can lead to anxiety, but stress can also increase the likelihood of hot flushes, so this can create a vicious circle. The emotional changes we experience can be varied. Low mood, irritability, and anxiety are the more common emotional reactions. This can be as a response to changes we're experiencing in menopause or due to other life challenges, such as parents' ill health, bereavement, children leaving home or not, or due to our response to aging. The third one, sleep disturbance, can be a result of waking in the middle of the night due to night sweats or due to other factors such as anxiety, hormonal fluctuations, or poor sleep hygiene. If the amount and quality of your sleep is disrupted, it can have a knock-on effect on your functioning the following day. Not all of us will have the same symptoms, and we may all react or respond differently to these symptoms. Both cognitive behavior therapy and mindfulness have been shown to be helpful in supporting us with some of the challenges that we experience in menopause, and these are the two areas I'd like to talk to you about today. Cognitive behavior therapy is based on the idea that our response to situations in our lives are made up of a number of different factors that interact together. This diagram will help illustrate. Our thoughts or beliefs, emotions such as feeling angry, sad, happy, or afraid, and the physical sensations that we notice in the body and our behavior or what we do are all interconnected, and changes that we make in one area can have a knock-on effect in other areas. The best way to illustrate this is with an example. And for the purpose of the webinar, I'll focus on applying this approach to one particular symptom, hot flushes. But the same principles can also be applied to help you understand and support you with any of the other symptoms such as anxiety, mood changes, or sleep disturbance. So let's talk about Jane, who is in her 50s and experiences hot flushes at work. The first step for Jane is to become aware of what was happening in her body and her mind. So let's start with physical symptoms. As she's having a hot flush, her body is getting hotter and she starts to sweat. She notices a fluttering in her heart. Then perhaps she notices what is passing through her mind as she starts to heat up. She could find herself thinking that everyone is looking at her, that she's out of control and can't cope. This leads her to her feeling embarrassed and flustered. And then, of course, she tries to do something about it. She leaves the room to get her out of the situation that she finds distressing. This is the natural fight-flight response, where we want to flee from a perceived threat. So what can Jane do, and how can CBT help? She can't change the situation, but by bringing awareness to her experience, she can make choices about how she responds. If she makes some changes in the different areas, she can interrupt the cycle, and Jane can have a new, more supportive response to the situation. In a hot flush, the physical sensations in the body are generally what we notice first, so we'll start there. One of the best ways to calm the body is by breathing rhythmically. When we do this, we send a message to the frontal cortex of the brain to let it know that all is okay. This restores the mind and body to a state of calm and allows us to think more freely. This is what Jane needs to do first. I'll be doing a mindful breathing practice later on, and I'll share some others with you in the resource pack that will be available through Edel, so you can be able to practice this at home. The next step is looking at Jane's emotions. It can be helpful to name and acknowledge and validate her emotions rather than questioning them. Jane is feeling embarrassed and flustered, and it's okay to feel this way. She can be kind to herself and allow herself to feel what she is feeling. Next, we look at our thoughts. CBT helps us to stand back from our thoughts and challenge them or come up with an alternative conclusion about a situation. Jane can ask some questions that help her to get a hold of her thoughts. Do I have the evidence that this is true? In this scenario, everyone isn't necessarily looking at Jane, and her colleague was just looking at her out of concern, not necessarily thinking badly of her. She might ask, what would I say to a friend? Jane might tell her friend that a hot flush is a normal part of hormonal changes that she is going through and that it won't last forever. She could also ask, what would a friend say to me? A friend might remind Jane that she is strong and has good coping skills. And Jane needs to remember that thoughts are not facts, they're just one view of a situation. Looking at these questions can help Jane to come up with an alternative, more supportive view. And finally, the final piece of the puzzle, change your behaviour by doing something different. Jane left the room. However, we know that avoidance and withdrawal, while helping in the short term, only serve to maintain the problem in the long term. Instead of leaving the room, Jane could stay and let the hot flush pass. She could also seek support from her colleagues. In addition, she can do some practical things to help manage her body temperature, such as layering her clothing, adjusting the room temperature, or even using cold devices, such as having a cold bottle of water in her bag and using it at the meeting to offset any heat generated by the hot flush. This is what Jane's alternative response looks like. So she has calmed her mind and body and made it feel more relaxed. And this leads to feeling more calm and accepting in herself. And then this will help change her thoughts as well. So she's challenged her thoughts. She says, this too will pass. I'm doing okay. I've good coping skills and supportive colleagues. And then she stays in the room to seek the support of colleagues and let the hot flush pass. And she also manages her temperature. So you can see how if we intervene at any of these areas, it can really have a knock-on positive effect on the other areas. So that's just a whistle-stop tour of some of the things that Jane can do to help her situation and support her in managing her responses to her hot flush. She could also apply these techniques to other areas such as anxiety, mood changes, and sleep disturbance. I'll be sharing a link to a handout that gives you more detail about how you can do this. The other intervention I'd like to talk about is mindfulness. Mindfulness is about paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, to what's going on in your body and your mind and the world around you. Being aware of what you're doing while you're doing it, whether that be walking or making a phone call or cooking a meal. And rather than worrying about what has happened in the past or what might happen in the future, mindfulness trains us to respond skillfully to whatever is happening right now, be that good or bad. We can practice mindfulness both formally and informally. When we practice informally in our day-to-day activities, we bring awareness and attention to things we're doing in the moment, such as going for a walk, eating or drinking, having a shower, or washing our hands. Let's take washing our hands as an example, because we're doing that quite a bit at the moment. Next time you're washing your hands, try to be mindfully do it by using the senses. The smell of the soap, the sensations of rubbing your hands together, the sound and feel of the water as you rinse your hands, really bringing your attention to the task of washing your hands, and see if it's different from when you do it on automatic pilot. We've got 20 seconds to do that because we've been encouraged by public health to wash our hands for 20 seconds. Let's see if you can use that 20 seconds at a number of times in the day to mindfully wash your hands, and if that helps you in any way. The other way we can practice mindfulness is formally through meditation, and I'd like to finish today's presentation with a short mindfulness meditation. So, sitting in a chair, making yourself comfortable with your feet flat on the floor, soften your shoulders and the muscles on your face, just allowing them to soften. Your hands placed on your lap or on your knees, and just closing your eyes gently if you feel comfortable with that. And if you don't feel comfortable, just picking a point either ahead of you on the wall or on the screen or on the floor, and just focusing on that for the duration of the exercise. And step 1, bringing your attention to the present moment, checking in and noticing what thoughts are passing through your mind. How are you feeling? Happy, sad, angry, afraid, or a combination of these? And what's the physical sensations do you notice in your body? Noticing in particular any areas of tension or tightness in the body. We're not trying to change any of these, just bringing our awareness to what's going on in the body and mind. And step 2, bringing your attention to your breathing. Breathing in and out through the nose so that your breath becomes naturally deeper. Noticing the breath as it enters and leaves the body through the nose, or in the rise and fall of the chest or the abdomen. Breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. And from time to time, you might notice that your mind wanders. And if you have a mind, it will wander. That's what minds do. But our task of mindfulness is not to stop the wandering mind, but just to notice it, and then gently bring your mind back to the focus of attention, which for now is the breath. And if it does it 1,000 times, bringing your mind back 1,000 times. And now step 3, expanding your awareness to take in the whole body, the whole space that the body takes up, as if your whole body is breathing. And sending the breath to any areas of tension or tightness and allowing them to open and to soften. Breathing in, sending the breath to areas of tension or tightness, and breathing out, allowing them to open and to soften. Your whole body breathing. And bringing a little loving kindness to yourself in this moment and repeating after me in your mind, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. And bringing this sense of loving kindness and spaciousness and present moment awareness into the next moments of your day. Just now, as the exercise comes to an end, orientating yourself in the room, noticing your feet flat on the floor, your bum on the seat, your back against the chair. And just noticing before you open your eyes where you are in the room. Part of this webinar, the group you're sharing it with. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes and smile.
Thanks a million, Coleen. That's the end of all of our presenters for this piece, and again, sincere thanks to all of you. There was so much information. I'm very conscious that there are a lot of questions being asked in the question and answer section, and the presenters are doing a great job trying to answer them there as well. So we want to gather the presenters around now for the live questions and answers, and I'll have some questions that maybe haven't been answered in written format in the question and answer section. So if we can just have everyone turning on their cameras there for the panelists, just so that we have you here for the questions and answers section. Is that everyone? So we have, you might just do the old-fashioned hand up. So Coleen is there, Shirley is there, Orla, delighted to have you, Brenda, and we're missing Fiona. Is Fiona there?
Yeah, Fiona's there, Adele.
Is she? I can't hear Fiona or see her, but okay, that's absolutely fine. You can
you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you, Fiona. Great. You can keep me posted. Okay, so listen, we have a few minutes just to say as well, a lot of people are saying, where can they get recordings for this? There will be a recording of this on the Cork Kerry website, the YouTube website. And maybe if one of my people in the background there could put that link up in the questions and answers or in the chat, wherever people are going to see it, because people are anxious to be able to see the recordings, because there's been a lot that people have had to take in. So if somebody could do that in the background, that would be great. So just some questions. So we've quite a few, Brenda, for you, which is probably understandable. So I'm going to put a few to you first, and I know you've answered some of them in the chat as well, but just a few that you might take, and I think everyone has a question. It's 12:20. We're due to finish at 12:30. We might just run another 10 minutes if we need to, if you're okay with that. But we'll see how we go. So Brenda, there's one here for you on, there's been a few queries about testosterone. Could you say more about testosterone? I suppose some people were maybe surprised by that. So could you say a little bit more about testosterone as,
Yeah. So I guess testosterone is also produced in the ovaries, and women's testosterone levels tend to decline gradually from the age of the early 40s onwards. It's different to the estrogen and progesterone loss that occurs around the average age of the men, or when someone goes through menopause, that it tends to occur before then, but it's very, very, very gradual. So when a woman has gone through the menopause, they still will produce some testosterone in a postmenopausal ovary, and also produce some testosterone in the adrenal glands. But it's, I suppose, the effects of testosterone in women are now more recognized, in that it's thought to have a very beneficial effect on things such as libido, and also on sometimes in brain function, such as brain fog and some mood symptoms as well, and can sometimes help women if these symptoms haven't been optimized by estrogen and HRT, if they are taking HRT. But it's important to say that estrogen levels still need to be adequate. So there's no point adding in testosterone if estrogen levels haven't been optimized in a HRT regimen.
Okay, and I'm conscious some of this you may not be able to answer because they're quite personalized, and I know you're limited in what you can say on the webinar. Okay, I'll give you a rest, Brenda, because you're going to have more coming at you. Shirley, can I just ask you, there was a question here about would rebounder training, i.e. a mini trampoline, be suitable for weight bearing training? Have you an answer for that one?
Yeah, I answered that personally, Adele, but just for others,
Yeah.
it would, a mini trampoline would be really good weight bearing exercise, and it's good aerobic type exercise too, because you're getting that force through the bones,
Okay,
So really
so
good exercise to do, and you could do it anywhere and have one at home, the little mini trampolines. Yeah.
So it's not just for the kiddies. Mammy can go on it as well.
Yeah, there's
And
classes you can do now using the trampolines as well in some places.
Oh, great. Okay, as long as it doesn't blow over the neighbour's hedge in the storm. But so that's great. I never knew that. Another one for you, Shirley. How often do I need to do bone loading exercises to maintain good bone health in menopause and beyond? Kind of how often?
Well, like if it depends what you normally are doing anyway, but like I was saying in the presentation, if you could include 1 or 2 minutes a day, so that might mean just running up the stairs, doing a few jumping jacks when you're waiting for the kettle to boil, breaking into a jog, maybe the last minute of your walk or something like that. So even just incorporating 1 or 2 minutes, each day is going to give you some benefit,
Okay, great. Thanks, Shirley. Orla, over to you. I mean, I have to say, I didn't know about women's physiotherapists until 2 years ago. It's an amazing service you offer.
Thank you.
But and so interesting what you had to say. One of the questions is about how do you get referred to a women's physiotherapist? Do I have to go through my GP or can I go directly to you?
I think you would be best going through your GP because, there can be other reasons why you might be experiencing urinary urgency or even pelvic pain. So I think the best thing to do is go to your GP. They may do their own assessment and they may screen you, and then definitely mention to them that you would like to be seen by a women's health physiotherapist. But the best thing would be to go to your GP first. And then if you're suitable, the GP will usually they have to refer to a gynecologist. Okay, so I'm based in the maternity hospital, and then you'll usually then be triaged to physiotherapy if they feel it's appropriate, or the gynecologist may feel that you warrant other investigations first. So the best thing is to go to your GP first.
Okay, and will GPs know about you? Because sometimes we can feel a bit underinformed going to GPs. Like I'm as well to say to the GP, listen, I've heard about women's physiotherapist.
Exactly.
Can I go there? Because sometimes I don't know, not all GPs might be as familiar. Is that right?
No, I definitely agree. I think there's a lot more awareness, I suppose, amongst GPs as to what we do compared to before. But what's good about today, I suppose, is that at least the women who've listened in, hopefully they've learned a lot and they're empowered and they even realise that I actually exist.
Yes.
Whereas they may not have even realised that we treat that before.
Yeah.
So, it's good for them to go into their GP and definitely say, I'd like to be referred to women's health physio as well. Yeah.
They can specifically ask for Orla McCarthy. You're going to have lots of callers.
Oh, yeah. Especially regarding pain with sex, I think it's often something that no one speaks about, and it does affect young women and old women. And like I said, there can be other reasons. That's why it's good to go to your GP first, if you can, and mention, look, I would like to be seen by a women's health physio. A lot of the work we do with that is about releasing a very tight pelvic floor muscle. Doesn't mean it's strong, it's just overactive. So, and that's, I suppose, something that maybe some GPs maybe don't realize we do that as much. So hopefully people have learned that today.
Oh yeah, I absolutely learned loads. Thanks a million, Orla, for that. I'm going to go back to Brenda for a bit and then I'll come to Fiona. Brenda, I've one here. Can one start HRT while perimenopausal, as in suffering a few symptoms such as night sweats, but still getting periods more or less regularly? So can you start HRT while perimenopausal?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can start HRT in the perimenopause. If you're having ongoing menstrual cycles, that's not a contraindication to HRT. It would just impact on the type of HRT that you're given. So usually in the perimenopause, we would give someone a sequential HRT, meaning they take progesterone for half of the month only, and estrogen would be daily, depending on your regimen. The reason why that would then induce a withdrawal bleed similar to your period. And the reason why people are given a sequential regime around the perimenopause is that if you're to give someone a non-bleed or post-menopausal continuous regimen, your own ovarian activity could override they could override the estrogen progesterone in the post-menopausal regime, and then that would cause irregular bleeding, which might then lead to investigations or unnecessary investigations.
Okay.
The other option then in the perimenopause, which is a good option, usually in majority of women, but not all women, will lighten or stop periods. So that's an example of a non-bleed product that people can use in the perimenopause.
You went a little bit there, Brenda. You went your connection went a little bit there, just on the last section.
The Mirena coil is another option for women in the perimenopause because it has the added benefit of being a contraceptive, number one.
Okay.
And it gives progesterone continuously to your womb. So that in the majority of women will either lighten or stop their periods. Not every woman will get that effect from the Mirena coil, but the majority of people do. And thus you can use your estrogen then. You just have to take your estrogen because your progesterone is being given to you via. So that can be another good option in the perimenopause.
Yeah, because it is, the contraception thing is very important during the menopause, that we make sure we don't, we need to be really careful about that. Okay, I'm going to leave you a bit again, for Brenda, and I want to come to Fiona. Fiona, I'm interested to get some info on bone health and how to optimize it post-menopause. What is the relationship between calcium, vitamin D and vitamin K? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Thanks, Adele. Yeah, good question. So I suppose as many of us have outlined today, it's key to look after our bone health after menopause because of the effects of estrogen to increase the risk of osteoporosis. So the way that we do that, the nutrients involved are mainly the calcium and vitamin D. They work together. So calcium obviously strengthens our bones. It's laid down within the bones. And after, I suppose, we finish growing, usually they say from the end of the 20s onwards, we actually start losing calcium every day from the bones. So it is important from that time on that we must replace it with dietary calcium on a daily basis. So from the food pyramid, like we've mentioned, the 3 servings a day of calcium food, dairy foods essentially, they will give you the necessary calcium needed. If people don't eat them, they can take a calcium supplement and they look for about 800 milligrams a day.
Okay.
Vitamin D's role is to help absorb that calcium. So that's the connection between the two. They're both very much involved in bone metabolism. And again, as I say, vitamin D, it's low in foods. So generally we do need a supplement of that because we also don't get much sun. So that's kind of the interaction between the two of them. Vitamin K does have a role in bone mineralization. There's some studies to suggest that it increases bone density. But the results seem to be not as strong as the calcium and vitamin D in terms of actively recommending a supplement. And in general terms, people get enough vitamin K anyway because it's found sort of throughout the diet in leafy vegetables, nuts, seeds, but also we produce it in our own intestines from bacteria. So it's not one that we tend to be low in and therefore not one that we tend to recommend a supplement needed.
Okay, thanks.
Okay?
I'm just getting notice here that the link to the webinar where you can get it has just gone up. So check the Q&A function if you want to check what that link is, because you'll then be able to go into the recording. It won't go up for a few days. Fiona, thank you for that. Just wanted to get that in. Intermittent fasting for 45 to 55. How are you on that, Fiona? Would you not be a fan of that? Or I know a few friends of mine are on that. Yeah. Do you recommend it, or are you saying absolutely not?
No, I would never say absolutely not if someone is interested in trying something. I suppose the main thing with intermittent fasting is there's so many different varieties of it. It's kind of an umbrella term. It doesn't really mean one specific diet. So the intermittent fasting can be anything kind of from the 5-2 diet is what people may have heard about, which basically means sort of 5 days of the week you're eating pretty much a kind of a healthy, normal diet, regular meals, but just try not to snack, try not to eat too much from the top shelf. And then the 2 days of the weekend, it might be that you're not that you're gorging, I suppose, on the other foods, but more that you're not restricting intake on those 2 days. So it can range from that to other people. Intermittent fasting means generally fasting no meals during the day, perhaps 1 meal a day, perhaps 2 meals a day. So it kind of depends really on what you're talking about. And as we said earlier, it is important that we have regular meals through the day for that consistent blood glucose levels. So getting in those long-acting carbohydrate, whole grain foods, they keep us full for longer, which is also going to help with weight management. So it is important, I would say, to continue to have regular meals, but certainly to be watching out for those in-between snacks. They tend to be the things that are more high calorie. And if people want to try short-term intermittent fasting in terms of 1 or 2 meals a day, then certainly if they feel that works for them, but only to do it for a short period of time, like that would not be good long term. Maybe a week or 2, see how you go with it. Okay. But really important to remember your hydration. Okay, so you might not be eating, but you still need to drink through the day.
Water. Okay, yeah. Thanks a million, Fiona. I'm going to want to come to Coleen, and then I'm going to go back to Brenda. Coleen, where am I gone? Oh yeah. I suffer from poor sleep pattern, and night sweats are not the problem. I also suffer from terrible waves of anxiety at times, which have been exacerbated since the menopause kicked in. I presume these symptoms may be discussed tomorrow. So there's something there about anxiety. Now, I know it's very hard for you to answer this question around anything around anxiety or sleep quickly, but in relation to anxiety, what would you be saying to people in relation to that, Coleen? I know you've said it already, but is there anything else you'd want to add about anxiety?
I suppose anxiety, it's a really common one that people experience in menopause, and and it can really feel very sudden when someone feels anxious. But and anxiety is our response to feeling under threat, and it's actually a very normal response. And what's not normal is when we get caught up in it. So. I think one of the things that can be really helpful to do first, which is what I said in the presentation, was calm your body down first. That's the one in any area where, for me, it's the most important. And there's a really interesting video on YouTube about that, about why. But I suppose it's a very physiological response initially. So calm the body down by doing some breathing exercise. And actually breathing is probably the first and the best approach to do. And then that'll give you a bit of space to tackle your thoughts. And often we find we've really anxious thoughts. We start to catastrophize, we overestimate the level of danger, and then we underestimate our ability to cope. So just maybe write down your thoughts and then maybe ask yourself, is this what I'm doing? Am I overestimating, my what's the threat here? And also, am I underestimating my own ability? Ask yourself as well, what would a calm person do in this? I'm feeling really worked up about this now, but what would a calm person? So just kind of bringing in the outside help, a little bit of maybe a little bit of compassion, someone who might be kinder to you, asking what they might do, what a friend might say to you, and just thinking, have I coped with a similar situation like this before? And if I have, what did I do then? So as much as we can, if we can, standing back a little bit. But really, I would say first step is calm the body down by taking some deep breaths. And a mantra I often use is stop, drop, and breathe. So literally, and it can take you like 30 seconds to do this. Just stop what you're doing and, drop whatever you're doing and just take a couple of deep breaths. And that can really bring you into the present moment and just let you either stand back that little bit. And sometimes we get caught up in those thoughts and they just feel they're like kind of fused with us. And if we can just put a bit of space and stand back, that can really, really help. Okay. Okay. So that's a very quick answer. The other thing that I really want to say is that thoughts are thoughts. They're not facts. They're just an alternative view of the situation. So it's a really important thing to say to yourself as well. Because again, when we got caught up in our thoughts, we can believe that they're all true. And we have like 70 to 90,000 thoughts a day. So just keep going through, and many of them are repeated and it's the same old ding dong a lot of the time. So just not to trivialize when people are feeling anxious about stuff, but when we stand back and watch it, we can really see. And sometimes I like to think of imagine putting thoughts on a leaf and watching them float down a stream, or on a cinema, on rolling through the cinema credits, just watching them pass by, letting them come and go, and we don't have to jump into the river or jump onto the screen with them.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Coleen. And I know you can feel quite a good few steps away from the public, Dr. Coleen Cormack in the mental health services. So one of the things we're saying is in our website, we have some practices for you in the Cork Kerry website, so people can touch into those short practices around stress reduction. And there are other practices too, other physical activity practices from Shirley. It's on that website, and that's been put up on your screen. So that's a really useful website to click into if you can't get to one of the people that are here on the screen. It's good to know where you can go as well for that. Brenda, I want to come back to you now. It's just gone 25 to. I'm going to stop it at quarter to, just so you know you're not going to be here all day, particularly the presenters. Just to say, in case I forget, when you leave today, there will be a link displayed on your screen for you to fill out an evaluation. Please do that. We just want to know what you think, what you thought of the webinar, what you would have preferred more of, what you'd preferred less of, what would you change. It's a very, very, very short questionnaire. It'll only take you 5 minutes. So please, I know myself, if I don't do it straight away, I might never do it. So if you could take a few minutes at the end, that link will be displayed on your screen. Brenda, can I come back to you for one or two more? I have to read this out because it's, if someone has had DVT, I presume it's deep vein thrombosis, or PE, I don't know what PE is, while on oral HRT, can they ever go back on HRT, i.e. estrogen patches? Do you understand? You understand that, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, the manufacturers and the product information leaflets are very, very defensive and will say that any history of any VTE or thrombosis is a contraindication to HRT. However, if the event, if the event is in the past and it's a couple of months ago, then I think there is a basis to saying that you could go on transdermal estrogen, because all the observational studies show that there is no increased risk of VTE with the transdermal product.
What's a transdermal? What does that mean?
Transdermal would be estrogen via the skin in a patch or a gel or a spray.
Okay.
Because it enters the blood, it enters your bloodstream via your skin, as opposed to being ingested via tablet. And when you ingest it via tablet, it goes through first pass metabolism in your liver and will activate your clotting, your coagulation cascade. So that's where the link with clotting comes in with oral products. Okay.
And I'm very conscious that people have to go to their own GPs anyway with a lot of these questions. You can only do so much. One person is saying, how can I get on HRT? My GP is not a fan. Change your GP. I don't know. There is a bit of there's a bit of questioning around that GPs may not always know a lot about the menopause. So I don't know if you want to answer that, but their GP is not a fan of HRT, and how can they encourage or ask more questions, I suppose?
It's a bit of a vague question, but I do acknowledge that there are variations in practice with managing menopause by GPs, and I think in the past the numerous symptoms weren't recognised as being possibly, the 30-something plus symptoms of menopause weren't recognised as being potentially due to estrogen deficiency or due to menopausal effects, particularly mood symptoms. So I think, when I did my training, and that wasn't, I qualified in 2006, but my menopause training consisted of, let's say, in physiology, period stop, and you might get some hot flushes, and that was it. And that wasn't too long ago. So I think it's only in the last probably 5 to 10 years whereby menopause is really being sort of understood, and there will be a lag effect between that and then delivering that education to doctors and nurses and even then so on forth in terms of education to students and the public in general. So I think you probably have to go through that with your own GP as to why they would have concerns about HRT. Do you have an active contraindication to HRT, in terms of the ones that were listed, in terms of having an active diagnosis of breast cancer, or an active diagnosis of a DVT or a clot or a stroke. But I mean, in really, there's not that many contraindications to HRT. So it's worthwhile just probably having the discussion with your GP. And there's lots of information out there. I'd recommend the Women's Health Concern website in the UK. That's fantastic.
Say that again, the Women's
Health Concern website in the UK is really, really good. The British Menopause Society have excellent, in terms of, for the medics and the nurses out there, have excellent summary statements on a lot of the issues that people encounter, such as, breast cancer risk and discussing hormonal treatment for women that are concerned about breast cancer. So there's really, really good evidence out there that has been sort of studied forensically. So there are two websites I'd recommend. Okay.
And we have given you, as you came in at the beginning in the waiting room, we have a website, we have a handout there, and you'll also have a handout at the end just pointing you towards good websites, because a lot of the time it's hard to kind of go through all of them, but there's some very good websites out there. I have just a few minutes to go. I wanted to ask Orla, just have you any last minute thing you would want to say to anybody here in relation to you? What's your kind of parting message to people that are listening today?
Just, I suppose, don't be embarrassed about your symptoms, because it can be very embarrassing. Speaking about issues such as urinary incontinence or fecal incontinence or prolapse or pain with sex. But I suppose it's something we speak about every day with women. So we're very used to it, and we're used to making women feel comfortable. So don't be embarrassed. Go to your GP. That's your first port of call. There is a lot that can be done about it. We won't fix everyone, but there will be a lot of people that will actually improve significantly with physiotherapy. And there's a lot more than just pelvic floor strengthening that we do, So that's what I would kind of say. And if you're nervous about vaginal examination, it's not something that you have to have done. It's not something that we do the first day if you don't feel comfortable. So, if that's something that's holding women back, don't be. There's an awful lot that we can do other than that.
Yeah. But I have to say, when I heard that, I was kind of relieved, because I didn't even know that got done. So it's great to know that you have professionals who know what they're doing there, and that you can get help. And really,
we're used
really
to treating women who have pain. So, we're very cognizant of that, and may have a lot of history. So, you're kind of coming to a professional who has the skills to manage that. So,
and won't be adding to embarrassment or anything like that. Because often with sexual health stuff, I remember one day meeting somebody who got a hot flush, and she apologized. And I was thinking, imagine apologizing for something that's a natural occurrence. But thanks very much, Orla. Anything finally from you, Shirley? Any go-home message that you want to? I noticed there we're not taking a lot of dedicated time for physical activity. A lot of the time women aren't. So any go-home message from you?
Well, I think maybe to not see your sort of exercise time as a chore or something you have to fit in every day. Just try and build some moving more into the day, but also using that exercise time to say, it's going to help with stress levels or time out maybe, or other symptoms, so see it as another beneficial way to manage menopause symptoms, rather than a sort of chore that you have to find time to do.
Yeah. It's a bit like health is a resource for living, not a goal. Yeah, great. Okay. Fiona, last
parting
comments
words
of any last parting words. I love your eat to live. Any parting words?
Yeah, I suppose I think probably the most questions I get around this area is about certain supplements and, what can people take. So I think really the main take-home message is that the best thing we can do for nutrition in menopause is actually just eat a varied, balanced diet. You don't need to spend hours and hours trawling the internet on information on supplements. You don't need to be spending a fortune. There is very little evidence, if any, on some of the supplements. So the best evidence is still remaining with good heart healthy eating, plenty of fruit and vegetables, plenty of whole grains, and stay active.
Nothing new there really much. Yeah.
No, sorry, nothing groundbreaking.
Thank you, Fiona. That's great. Coleen, parting words?
I suppose my parting words are just, it's a normal time. And as Brenda said, it can be a positive time as well, lots of positive changes. And mind your well-being or your mental health all the time, not just when difficulties arise. So I think engage in things that bring you joy and nourish you in order to build up your resilience and your resources, so that when difficulties do strike, that you're in a better position to face them. And if you need help, get help, and don't be afraid to ask your GP for a referral, either to a primary care psychologist or to an adult mental health psychologist or service. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help. In fact, it's a sign of strength, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. And your friends are great informers too of places to go. I found that in the health promotion department. There's a world of information about the menopause. If you ask your colleagues, they send you on to wonderful places. Brenda, parting words from you before we close up?
The menopause is an individual event. Everyone's menopause is going to be different. So please don't compare yourself to others. And just have a think about, if you're in the perimenopause right now, how you want to treat symptoms if they do occur down the line. And, just being aware of the potential health consequences that occur that can increase postmenopause, such as osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease. So just awareness of lifestyle factors is really, really important. And maybe just using the menopause as a platform to introducing positive changes into your life as well.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be all, because I know we had a lot about signs and symptoms, but we can have a lot of agency in supporting ourselves through the menopause. And there are obviously a lot of women that are interested today. Listen, I need to close it up. The link to where the listen, if you can't get onto the link, just email myself or Catherine and we'll get you onto the link. Don't be worried about that if you need to after. So I think you have our email addresses, but the link should be up there now from the point of view of where you can see the webinar afterwards. Also, please, when you leave, please fill out the evaluation. Very, very short, won't take a few minutes. So just to finish, to thank you so much, Coleen, Shirley, Orla, Brenda and Fiona, thank you so much for your time. You have been great to work with, and I know I put you under pressure with the timings and stuff, but I have learned so much from you, and it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. Thank you so much for your time. In the background there, I have Ailish, Catherine, Anna, Maura and Martha. They're all helping in the background. Thank you. Also, thanks to Craig, who's our technical man. He's been wonderful. He's been in the background and he's great. To Sharon, our boss there, Sharon Parkinson, and to Priscilla Lynch as well, who I don't know whether Priscilla is listening. So just to finish, and we're going to finish, I'm going to read a poem. So I'm going to finish with the poem, and you can close your eyes. And once the poem is finished, the webinar is finished. Thank you to all of the people who signed on. We've had an enormous interest. We may follow up with something else. Delighted to be able to bring you this. Hope we got a lot of your questions answered. And please contact Catherine or I or Maura O'Leary, and we'll do our best afterwards to see what we might do as well. So just take your seat, get comfortable in your seat. You can close your eyes if you want to. And I'm going to end with a poem. And the minute the poem is over, Craig, you can switch us all off. Okay? So this is called Forget About Enlightenment. Sit down wherever you are and listen to the wind singing in your veins. Feel the love, the longing, the fear in your bones. Open your heart to who you are right now. Not who you would like to be, not the saint you are striving to become, but the being right here before you, inside you, around you. All of you is holy. You are already more and less than whatever you can know. Breathe out, touch in, and let go. Thank you very much, folks. Take care. Bye.